Good morning, everyone. You're listening to Trace Elements Radio, live, of course, on Revolution Radio, Studio A, and Trace Elements Radio. We have a lot to talk about today, and I'm going to try to wind it down a little bit. We're not going into some of the news today because it's too horrific and I've pretty much had enough of it. You know, the widespread permafrost melting is about to set off a greenhouse gas time bomb, like a real one. Carbon dioxide, methane, and ancient things that we were not supposed to be breathing at this point. So massive amounts are going to be released into our skies to give us an air that we haven't had for about 56 million years. It's been held in an icy prison, and I was thinking about that today. And of course I have an article about this on Trace Elements Radio. We're about to pass through the eye of a needle. All of Earth passes through the tail of Halley's Comet, giving us meteor showers and Lord knows what else within the next couple months. But if that's not enough, in April, part of the Temple of Baal that stood in Syria will be reconstructed in two places on this planet. Times Square, interesting term, New York City, and Trafalgar Square, London. The specific portion that is being erected in both cases is the 48-foot tall Golden Arch that stood at the entrance to the temple. So the Institute of Digital Archaeology is an organization behind this effort. A display of these two arches is intended to be the highlight of UNESCO's World Heritage Week, April. So it can serve as an entrance and an exit. It is a gateway. It is a portal. And we've covered them before, but we're getting two new ones because the world is not esoteric-y enough, I guess. Could it be possible that we will be willingly knowing, or unknowingly perhaps, setting up another opening? So the worship of Baal, also known as Bel, like Abel or Habel or Jabal, can be traced all the way back to pre-Babylon. Chief god of the ancient world. And we'll be going into that today. And it's interesting to note that according to Wikipedia, the name of the city of Babylon is believed to have originally come from the Akkadian word that meant the gate of God, or the gateway of God. So the English Babylon comes from the Greek, a transliteration of the Akkadian Babali. The Babylonian name in early 2nd millennia BC could have been a couple things. Babili or Babala. Anyway, it appears to be an adaptation of an older, unknown origin, non-Semitic, a place name. By the first century, well, the first millennia BC anyway, it had changed to Babylon. This we know for sure, under the influence of, well, colonization basically. But it still means the gate of God, or the gateway of God. So we have a portal for the chief god of ancient Babylon. We will be talking about him in the next couple days. I've got a lot ready for you. We'll just have to see how far I get. So, we have to file this under creepy much? It just seems so surreal now that they're actually building a temple of Baal, 5 stories high, erected in April. So, according to New York Times, Temple of Baal will come to Times Square. Reproductions of this 50-foot arch that formed the temple's entrance are to be installed in New York and London, a tribute to an ancient structure that was destroyed by the Islamic State last year, actually, in a Syrian town called Palmyra. Basically means the mother's hand, from what I can tell. Now, the group's rampage, of course, in a city that reached its peak 2nd, 3rd century AD. The amount of treasures of this earth that have been just completely lost in the last 3 years are staggering. But it kind of sounds like an episode or twisted one of Stargate. And not something that's supposed to happen in the real world. So, if we want to take all this to another level of creepiness, let's recall that I talked about this before, that Baal evolved from the chief god of the city of ancient Babylon, called Marduk. Marduk can be traced to an actual historical person. This person was known in Sumerian literature as King Enmerkar. Sounds like Merkaba. And the Bible, he is known as Nimrod. So traditionally, we're talking about the Tower of Babel, the event. And this event is associated with Nimrod, as well as Jewish historian Josephus. Both seem very emphatic on this point, that the Sumerian name Enmar-Kar, the suffix Kar means hunter, so Enmar-Kar is in fact Enmar the hunter, like we just celebrated for apparently Jesus' birthday, Christmas, Hern the hunter, same guy. So just as Nimrod was referred to as a mighty hunter, Genesis 10, by the way, furthermore, Enmar-Kar is named in the Sumerian king list as the one who built Uruk, just as Nimrod is described in Genesis as having a kingdom that began in Babel, and Erech, it's Uruk anyway, so Eridu and Uruk, in the land of Shinar. So after his death, he became honored in Sumerian myths as a semi-divine figure. Eventually this cult evolved to the great cult of Marduk, which became the state of Babylon after conquest, after religious modification, of course, and the invocations of Hermerdi. We'll talk about it later. So this cult of Marduk was the root of all the old religions of the Middle East and Egypt and Greece and Rome, which means it is Christianity at its true core. The Christianity that was forced on all the peoples in the world. By the way, your people did not worship this. This is Baal, this is Osiris, this is Apollo. Excuse me, guys, I got a cough. Today, all the societies, all the cult groups are looking forward to the day that this deity will be resurrected and will return to rule the earth once again. I'm here to tell you, he's never left. So let's go into it a little deeper today. Because when I look at the information coming forward these days, from various factions, of course, mostly what I see is fear and insecurity, as many attempt to translate what will happen in the future. As people become more creative at predicting what kind of doom will befall humanity, I think they have neglected something major, a component, is that activated humans who are alive right now and well on the dimension and formulation of a grand plan to remove humanity from this vicious cycle. And you will see, you will witness that a great deal of the world has always been engaged in constant rivals. So today, we open up the tree of secrets, the escape. And I posted in the rooms because there's pictures today, so you can follow along. So anyway, they've generally chosen to credit these wars to their God's wishes. However, it becomes clear that men's desires are equally at fault. It just so happens that in different segments of the world, small and unknown to most, other members of humanity are focusing on something completely different, rather than spending so much time and energy arguing and fighting and worshiping and accumulating bad karma. They're looking inward to discover the true meaning of their existence and the secrets of the body. To truly know what is going on and what will happen in the future cycle, as the opening begins, because we are passing through Halley's Comet. It's always been the foreteller. So this is a cycle. And you really need to look at what happened before. Since whole reality is on a cycle, like a little hamster, being determined by the repetition of a canopy of stars emitting light, so programs, the only thing that remains for us is to find a way out, a true exodus. When doing the same thing hourly and daily, and monthly, and yearly throughout centuries and even eons, the universe becomes a giant wheel. Cycle, circle. This must be escaped. And you'll find in history a great struggle from man and woman as they strain under the yoke of God-kings. Always. It is important to keep in mind the difference between gods and or sons of fire and the Most High. To be clear, the Most High is a totally different thing. The Most High, a totality of all things. The creatures, family trees, while the gods are various branches and twigs and fruits and thorns for the most part. And to begin part of this quest, we must start at the base, the netherworld, the roots, factuality, so we can be sure to take all the levels of consciousness with us on this grand elevator up. It's the only thing you should be focusing on now. The only way to save us. And since all on various levels, it never hurts to recap. Even for those of you who have heard this before. It would be of value to get familiar with the ancient symbolism in order to recognize not only the information that I'm going to tell you about, have told you about, but the great deal of knowledge presented. One must know exactly what is being conveyed, so they are not so easily confused by what may appear as a reward. Remember, there are always 3 sides to a coin. So I have a first image. The Adala chakra. Here's the description: bottomless, a no place, a spawning point for the negative female aspects, such as excess unchastity, adultery, from other fleshy portals, or polarity, male or female. When one finds themselves in this state, they think they are themselves, that they have become gods, with no effort, but alas, they are in an illusion. Such a state of Hada Kursa, which is easily overcome. But this is the starting point, because we come from the darkness. At first there was nothing. And no. From now on, when I mention Egypt, I am referring also to Chaldea, Assyria, Sumeria, Syria, Babylon, and all such areas that share the same ideas, the spawning point. So we start with the spirit. And I have an image here of a mummy clasping in his arms his very soul, which has wings. It's about to set free. Because the soul and the body have an affinity for one another. And throughout the ancient texts, the spirits and doubles are often mentioned. This should put it straight once and for all about an idea that seems so far-fetched for many disbelievers and those yet to know. The soul is here to grow from this experience that we are having. It is like a being inside of a chrysalis, a cocoon, if you will, that has a scheduled time it must release its inward inhabitant. The soul, in its beginning, inception, is yet to gain strength and experience and abilities. Thus it must learn all these things through physical existence. This is why life should be filled with increasing the strength of your spirit and the strength of your body, as it will assist you greatly on your future journeys throughout this cosmos. And you'll notice that spirits can be equipped with various abilities. This is no different from unlocking the chakras, as they are entwined. The spirit and the body work in conjunction to get the spirit prepared for its next endeavor. The endeavor will be based upon how equipped the spirit has become. Now I have an image of the soul on the edge of a funeral couch, with its hands on the heart of the mummy. So for those looking for the purpose of life, that's it. It is to prepare yourself for the next existence, which is guaranteed, just as sure as the universe loves to recycle. They say the creators made man from dirt. Well, this shows how they are really recycling. So your quest is to become the most balanced and equipped in order to expand all your senses. Each sense gained equals a greater perception, a higher attainment. If one should fail, they will loop around in cycles indefinitely until they gain control once more, which generally happens when a pole shifts. And you will see how easy it is for a being to spend eons basically doing the exact same thing, not even noticing that they haven't changed. So many ask why I take such an offense to a great deal of the gods. It is partly because the gods have become a crutch to men and to women, but even deeper than that. Man, with his shallow way of seeking interactions, has failed to uphold the most valuable. This is to protect the feminine earth, as you are her guardian. Beings wholly or partly comprised of fire have an inherent duty to protect, not just consume, certainly not to desolate. And we can't blame just the rich for this, just the elite for this. They are no different than we are. They just have more means. They screw up on a broader scale. But our little screw-ups are just as bad. So when out of balance, such beings protect foolishness and destroy wisdom. When the guardian is removed, it leaves the creation subject to intrusion. And thus we find ourselves in that current situation right now, standing on the edge. And giving credit to this, you find women, for the most part, still doing her duty. There's a woman who bears the child, and when the child is birthed, she has the strongest instinct to protect and preserve it, by keeping it safe and fed to the best of her ability. Remember, she does this by instinct. So man's instinct should be to protect and preserve. Many men find themselves not doing this. So thus we have lost our instinct. And of course man was to consider the whole earth as his mother, wife, sister, and daughter, because it not only brought all the things also nourish them through all the stages of life. Now let us consider in ancient symbolism. When something with wings is depicted, they were referring to spirits, not flesh. Do not forget this is on your path to become an adept. Angels are spirits, not flesh, seldom appear fully physical. This is because the angels exist on angles or spaces between spaces. You can witness such things by looking out of the corner of your eye. A corner is a right angle, and more people are seeing corner things, the shadows, the shades, those weird flashes of light. You can see and almost see. You are not imagining these things. And we've already discussed how many things that are bitter have the greatest benefit to you. The best physical workout should leave you sore, but you constantly get stronger. So it is obvious to the wise that there is no good or evil, but rather opposite forces that constantly combust when combined with one another as if in conflict. This is done in order to produce energy and motion, hence the term universe. Uni, united, verse is against, as in the word verses. This versus that. Also verses as in song. It's the same thing, and it becomes no wonder that the Bible is full of verses, because the entire book is designed around conflict. There is a simple principle about negative interpretation. Negative interaction breeds negative things. The world has done so much of this now. Many are ready to unite with its positive side. When this occurs, the universal body will power up completely. The process I speak of will occur for many due to the planetary alignments, the solar influence, amongst thousands of other things. In short, it is your time. And as you can see, was always considered an even higher ability to use one's double or opposite in conjunction to one's endeavors. This is why opposites attract. When a person says opposites, what they are actually describing is a mere reflection. If you think about it, the mind, body, and soul consists of so many positives, so many negatives, that the mere reflection could not, well, it would not look very different, especially if you are balanced. It should look the same. This is knowledge generally meant for kings and royal companions only. I have an interesting image, notion, bull, of a king and his double. And you will also notice that around the edges of this basque relief is an indication of spirits being used to keep the man down or underneath the paw of a lion. Sphinx. Now, to say all lions are bad is just as silly as saying that all humans are good. But there are some really mean lions. The lions were also protectors. Some real Lion King type stuff is going on all the time with the animal kingdom as they act out their fractal of their above human resonators. So this is no different than what is seen under a microscope when particles collide to spawn yet more complex particles. Like Osmosis Jones, I put a link, you can look them up. We are all living inside of all of it, experiencing it. This is at times marvelous, strange, scary, surprising, anything else you can imagine. It's all here in the internal universe, waiting to manifest itself externally. And once a particle becomes complex enough, it will then learn what its purpose is, thus becomes conscious and part of the other conscious networks that are linked by one common unbreakable integer that we just call the conscious frequency. This is the channel we communicate on. This is the channel that cannot be hacked. And again, if one is not truly aspiring for consciousness, awakeness, awareness, whatever ness word you want to use here, if you're simply playing in the mind in order to fit in, you will have no access to this, just like a droid would not. Consciousness means that you are now directing your interactions with everything, just as a dolphin must be conscious of every breath it takes while it sleeps. Fully asleep and fully awake at the same time. If it fell asleep like we did, it would die. So ancient lores depicted more negative spirits as being more earthly, animalistic, or animistic. In order to get caught up in this dualistic symbolism, it simply means this kind of spirit now contains more ground than air. In alchemy, these types of substances become very useful as a base or a platform. And the whole of the work depends on this base nature. The mystery has already been solved, if you are willing to just say that, though. Sat placed at the base of a pyramid or a ziggurat because he was black, as the set means darkness. They are already familiar with the womb of this planet and where everything came from. Black. What are we looking for? We need something resplendent, a new reality in which we can experience all the spectrums at choice and full mastery. This is the climbing of the ladder of lights, or the chakra system. And be aware, each wheel contains its own master. And it is this master that you must overcome. In many cases, it is part of yourself. It's part of who you are. But it still becomes very simple then. From the base of the structure, it is black, and the very top, or the capstone, is white. A midget on the shoulder of a giant. In the middle, you have every color in the spectrum. At any point, if one of these colors feels it is better than the other, it ceases to become what it is, as each color loses its beauty for not being illuminated by the color next to it or in contrast of it. Out of this you get a classic difference of the bird and the serpent. The one who remains at the lowest point of the ground and the one that resides in the air. And such dualities not being explained properly led to this, the dualism of catastrophic propensities. We see that it always comes a time that both need each other, and it's incorrect to make the duality another human opposite of color. Ultimately, this is the same parody of the bird and the serpent. Later it becomes Aryan and Nubian. But the secret is, Cain and Abel have always been fighting against the exact same thing. Conan, Cain, CNN, Canaan, and Jabal or Habel, Abel, Baal, Baal. So they just made a temple to Abel. They always find themselves in the same situation as prisoners. And it is a fact that the ruling parties have used this tactic of division throughout their kingship in order to keep the two forces that need each other from uniting. Anytime a highly populated nation is raided and occupied, they send its original inhabitants far, far away, like a Grimm's tale, to separate places, lest they replenish their ranks and attempt to free themselves. That's how it's done. The controllers are now and well aware that this is happening on an entirely different level, which we do not have to link up physically, but can link up spiritually in an eternal or etherical return from the spiritual abyss. It's a tough time for evil. Don't think it isn't. We have made it hell for them. And while this is all going on, we make haste to regroup ourselves as fast as possible to end the reign of the ignorant. The ignorant one despoils the earth, the universe, which they also consider as a bad genie because they cannot tame it. They cannot civilize it. Not completely, not ever. There is still resistance. We are now going to show overwhelming evidence that all races have been enslaved by a party which is of an unbalanced biorhythm, not a particular color. In fact, they come in all colors and have done it to all creeds. This level of consciousness wears human skin like a suit because through many of them, they're human. They do not fit. They're not fit to be known as human. So to make it clear, the human people have never been free. And they have only been used to build the industry of false kings. and prophet priests and Lilithian queens, masquerading as gods when in fact they are demigods at most, at best full of unpaid karma from bad choices. A fool, Phul, also said and told, fool is born every day. Look up that word. It would take me a show. We have the power within to cease such things as we now have, the knowledge which they have attempted in every way to prevent from being released, but alas, the strength has become a weakness. We almost won in the 60s. This was almost over. Might be your parents, might be your grandparents, might be you yourself. But what was done before can happen again. So understand the divisions of spirit. Men and women as humans are often weighted by how much spirit they have within them. Also keep in mind, spirit is also categorized in different types of ways, like Ka and Ba. The difference being the origin itself, which coincides with the various universal wombs or mothers. These wombs are known as the urus or the ox, cow, the phi or the feline, feminine, fertility, the sa or the serpent seed, the Venusian portal, the amphibian, America. These are female names. So a picture up of 9 eyes from 4-legged ones and others. So the geometry of the eye corresponds to the portal that the being has come through, which also governs its makeup. Side lateral eyes, such as those seen on horses and goats, Uranus. Vesica, such as felines and serpents, is Venus. The circular eyes, Earth, in addition to the hexagonal eyes, such as those found on flies and insects, correspond to Saturn. Always keep in mind that the human being is a composite being, especially after colonization. So if a person is mostly flesh, they can be called 2/3 human. 2 parts human, 1 part spirit, which is hidden meaning to the number 23. So if a being is 1/3 human, they have more spirit. This is known as fallen one, or the Nephilim. This is why when a country or a place or people go under colonization, the first thing that's done, very first thing, is try to divide those people. Rape, of course, always worked, always done, and death of the old and the fertile and the very young, because they are pure. This is why there's always some sort of papal bull or the creed that says how native you are. This happens everywhere. It's always happened. It's always done this way. So to say, still possessing human bodies. However, many are very adept at displaying actions related to the spiritual plane. These things are physical and not physical. It's made us to divide us even further, although we are hecka divided in general. mixed with everything that has been here, passed by here, that we are going to be passing through in the next couple days for all of April. And then, with our veils shredded, they build a gate in 2 places. Oh my goodness. It should hence be pointed out that the Aryans came from the sky because they were kicked out of the sky. Most of them landed in Persia, now India. They were blue because they came from the sky abode. This was their home before interacting with the surface. The inhabitants of the sky are on a dimension next to us. So the inhabitants of the sky had access to entering Earth, which was just a lower plane being cultivated by higher beings. This leads us to some of the beings from higher planes that they came here, because everyone has stories of them coming here. Some, like the Aztecs, have a specific number of people that landed. They said 200. Didn't say 201. Didn't say it was 90-ish. Said 200 landed. And truly began to mingle with the inhabitants here and create. This is why when they are starting to come forward with what we are a heck of a lot of things, some of which are not from here. Now we can say it was amoeba falling to Earth from a meteorite, because that happens. We could say it was salts and minerals falling to Earth from asteroids, because that happens. Or we can listen to our people who said star beings. Whatever way you want to look at it, our DNA proves this. It cannot be ignored anymore, that we are a mixed bag. And that's not even talking about we're all hecka mixed right now. This is how it's done, because this is what we learned. Now, because of the spiritual strength within many of these beings, it forever left men and women altered, and the entire drill of Earth has been what? Colonized. The situation amongst men and women who truly have immense power that must be governed as they remain in conflict. These beings would have stayed home if home was good. We see this physically. People leaving Europe to come, say, to Turtle Island. 2 reasons. You hate home, or they hate you and they send you where? Like a Brothers Grimm trail, far, far away. It's the same thing. One way or another, home rejected them. These are the rejects, or the evacuated, or the refugees. And they're always hated. Always. So we have that karma and trauma to get over. But of course the situation has amplified because certain factions have access to secrets that give godlike abilities, godlike power, godlike money, which has become, well, which is always the root of all evil, but has become the currency of the planet now. And most remain still unaware that they could have the exact same abilities if they knew how to cultivate them properly. And it's always the same here. Some live lofty, fleshly lives and bar the door to spiritual progress for the masses, just so they in turn can stay around to serve yet another life sentence as an attendant or a servant to the Khan. And the story is the first Khans and pharaohs are said to have descended from a line of beings that resided in the air. That's what it says. Specifically. It's not vague about it. Our stuff is vague as hell. The ancient stuff was not vague. These beings from the air, they then mated with all fleshly beings on the surface. That included animals. And what you had after is the beginning of Earth's animalistic cycle known as the zodiac. That's why we have the word zoo and zodiac. Now that you understand, look at this picture of Bel Merodach, who I was telling you about. Many names. Armed with a thunderbolt, doing battle with Tiamat. And we are Tiamat's monsters. The story I told you about before. We are Tiamat's monsters. We are monsters because we're mixed. Nobody likes that. Until they get a little closer, and then they like it a little bit, and then they get used to it, and that's how it goes. So anyway, understand, it means when you see Tiamat here, the mother of monsters, or beings with various animal and spirit combinations, depicted as very equipped being of a high nature, as she is shown combined with a bird and a lion, a lion serpent, and a urus, a cow. Bel Merodach, or Marduk, or Murdoch, is then shown here attempting to civilize the earth. Tiamat with a lightning bolt, with electricity, and we said no. And that's always the way. They want to civilize. There's a group that always comes in to civilize. It has nothing to do with color here. This is just the way. We'll continue when we get back, and we'll go to Adam and the atomic race. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, 100% listener-supported radio, and now we return you to your host.
Welcome back, everyone. You're listening to Trace Elements Radio, live on Freedom Slips, Studio A, and Trace Elements Radio. So here we are, Tiamat's monsters. Who will not be tamed. This is why we all have the spirit of rebellion. This is why they never kill all the natives. And I mean all of you, because you go back to a native root. Somewhere your people started from one people. And you are still here. They cannot tame us. They are trying everything. They are using computers. They are using television. They are using radio frequencies. These things are not by accident. They are spraying our food. They are genetically modifying and everything. They are so afraid of us. They are building another freaking gateway so this Marduk will come in and try to tame us again. The entire Adamic or atomic race has been involved in these situations. It's important to bring up Cain here, who was given a mark to ensure that he could rule abroad and remain feared after he was kicked out of what was clearly another dimension or an enclosed garden. Let's look at this Cain for a minute again. And by the way, I watched the Matrix series and was completely wrong. I was. Neo, anagram for one, was never the one. Smith was always the one. He is Cain. He is AI. He was part of the Matrix. He was the one who could go back to the Matrix. That's why he won in the end. They had to fight side by side as brothers, and every one of our ancient prophets, from Saul to all of the elders, have told us, do not fight with your brothers, because if you do, the demons will come. We have not learned that lesson very well. I'm hoping we do. We're trying. We're here together. So, we're trying. We're doing better at it. I think on a small level, anyway. You look at the world, it doesn't look hopeful. But I do believe that the mark was an Ankh, which is a symbol of a priest king. And here is the etymology. Cain equals coin. Cohen, Enoch, priest, Khan, Ankh, Khan, Cain, coin, priest. And I have an image of the god Al of Babylos. So Babylon, the real God Al of Babylos. To end all confusions, that we break through with the exact knowledge. And we remain strong. And as you can see, a king always strikes his own coin, because the two are connected. What most are worshipping as God now is none other than the kings from a long time ago. Long, long ago and far, far away, that have not lost their luster, as the servants remain in service of convenience to themselves. So let no one know the God is no longer resident. They don't want you to know that. So praying and praying on the unsuspected, while they ignorantly immerse in religion which has produced very little, if anything. The truth is, if someone wanted a planet of intelligent, expansive beings, the knowledge and the elements have always been here. And they only take proper education and application. All of the things we've ever had are still here. So why give tests to people that are sure to fail due to observing distorted role models for what appears to be several yugas, which keep repeating every time some pagan screams golden age? People are defending something that is in fact holding them back, and that is why the world is out of solutions, because they fail to factor in themselves and the inherent power within. But this too will come to pass rapidly as the quantum leap of consciousness continues to surprise all who were in doubt, with sad faces glaring in the sky in hopes of watching a meteor fall on them. Remember these days, men and women, as they prelude your greatest time. The lowest low will ultimately allow you to feel the highest high. And the temple of Babylos, the real temple of Babylos, is the Bible. And the current popular religion, with many names, is actually the most weak, the most watered down, to ensure it contains no real power for the entered seeker to go into that house. It came much later and was brought forth by individuals who had very little understanding of others' customs or costumes pertaining to stellar worship, lunar worship, sun worship. Instead, they knew a great deal about war and division. That they got down. But each time a conquering nation succumbs to foolishness of absorbing the local gods of those they had defeated, in their lust for power blindly they eat the poison of yet another serpent, with little knowledge or understanding of what they are eating. That's why it became all the thing to pretend you were related to a Cherokee princess, even though there were no princesses here. This is why we hear people not of the natives here telling you how to worship the natives here and the natives' religion here. This has always happened. So the typical pharaoh, and I have a picture, it's a copy, but it comes down to print and add any color to the face you want. So the cosmic goose god, which lays the golden egg, or king, teasingly waves to the captives, enslaved tribes conquered by pharaohs, the glyphs that make up their bottom half, name tribes many of which correspond to Hebrews and Jews, more bound captives making up the bottom or the foundation of a king's throne, a spirit subduing a man. Priest kings at times had spirits under their control that they could command to do their bidding. The mark or the ankh of a Khan, a crook to control the sheep, a flail to beat the sheep. And it was common for royal chairs to depict captives. I have an image. Some are in families that contain immense amounts of wealth and have become aware of how that wealth was obtained. Take hold of it, go out into the world, balance the karma of relatives who are currently in sorrow, stuck on dimensions remote and foreign. In doing so, a light can appear for them. Entire genealogies depend on how such people are now. Another image of how the tax was levied before. Taxes used to be a little bit more taxing because they used real tax on people. I have a picture. It is of value for those that have chosen to name themselves Egyptian names to reveal about as if major feats had been accomplished by these beings. They keep misinterpreting as their only ancestors to know the truth. They are always trying themselves to relate to gold and jewels, not things that are much deeper, as such as the composition of a tree that rests in Ethiopia underneath the constellation of Queen Cassiopeia. Such people must realize they have fallen victim to propaganda, as the culture of Egypt was assumed by anyone that came under the dominion of Egypt, whether slaves or rulers. So to make it clear, when someone conquered Egypt, they could not resist feeling as if they had been chosen by the gods to rule. Few did not fall prey to this desire. So you could only imagine how many monuments looked down upon the new ruler and filled him or her with incessant pride. Geologically, few animals are indigenous to the location we now call Egypt, as most animals found themselves imported to that area. However, several breeds of serpents are. This says a lot when one really knows that animals correspond to types of spirits that will be astrally wandering around certain places. But look at the image, an old image from Egypt. Humans on a boat, and they are resources. Incorrectly, some people feel like the statues were somehow meant to depict them and risen as a testament to the strength of their race in particular. But the fact is, it was of the Pharaoh and erected for people to worship. They go further, thinking something like this is still a major feat. But they are not thinking about how much labor it took to do such things. And this was not pleasant for our ancestors who found themselves to be slaves. The slaves of the Egyptians, the Assyrians, the Chaldeans. And another image of a gang of Syrian prisoners making brick for the tomb of Amun. Amun later became ammunition. It is Jupiter, basically. So it appears many have not learned their lesson and are at it again, still worshipping these beings that just recently enslaved them. Jupiter, Jove, plays a large part of the Old Testament. As I said, it has no respect of color, and the ultimate objective here, whether it is being caused by a real God or not, it is to keep people ignorant to the powerful abilities within. We are speaking now from a stance of already discovering vividly that they exist, not from a point of hope, nor from a point of faith. So for those talking the rah, you need to meet Raz, Ree, and associates. Here's a picture. Those located near the Horn of Africa, in areas such as Nubia, are still subject to the residue of abuse meshed out by the Pharaoh Ramses and his son. Many of these people were beat into submission until an entire empire of lion-like protectors ceased to do as such and succumbed to the pacifist music laden with Zionism. This is the connection between the Ethiopians and the Jamaicans. Clearest indication of possession is one king should have a lot more to do than to beat prisoners. But it doesn't look like that ever happened. So this type of situation is parallel to the netherworld, in which one must be tasked by force to work physically in order to learn valuable lessons of core strength. To return oneself to it would be sheer madness. So know the truth and do not fall unceasingly into the same black hole that many people have dissipated into, as they spiral out of control, unable to gain bearing. Never let the illusion cloud you, as society attempts to make its denizens believe that they have escaped such abuse when they are in fact being abused more now. It is now, however, indirect, so people don't recognize it, but cities were always meant to be open-air prisons. That's why people talk about leaving, but never do. And as you can see in the image that I have, Caucasians, the heads of 3 Amorite captives. Amorite Caucasians. Nubians. Convoy of prisoners. Orientals. Asiatics. As you can see here, all of our people have been slaves. We all need to see that we have all been in bondage. Will we now all come out of bondage together? And in addition, because captives sought to have favor of Egyptian gods, they abandoned their current customs, began to worship those given to them by Egyptian priests. This was done by agreement or by force. Christianity is such a religion, as it was founded on the Egyptian pretext and the rites of Ishtar and Isis and Astarte. A religion of rites dedicated to a rejuvenating dying god or vampiric Merovingian. The sacrifice of goats to Ishtar. And the sacrifice now becomes another son or soldier. Soldier actually means a dying son. The dogs are depicted under the chair to designate CNN, Canaan, or the descendants of Cain, who was black before he was released from the garden, which caused him to become something like opaque. So it needs to notify the members of Ashtar Command that Ishtar is in league with the moon god Sin that I was telling you about. And notice the trident of Ishtar as a warrior goddess. The reality is war gods became war goddesses when it suited the priests to make them look like there had been some major change. Statues of gods carried off by Assyrian soldiers. They just grabbed them. That's always been the way. You take the old gods, you put the new ones in. or you change the older religion a little bit. So at first, no one notices. And in the event that a warrior, god or goddess, lost, they would be taken away to sit around for a while, then be given a new name, and eventually be raised again as a patron deity, especially if it was related to war. Thus, most of mankind always were looking to other things for power, and seldom discovered their own power. And here we see Photri led to the god to receive a reward of some sort of sacrifice. Constant sacrifice proves to lead nowhere with these stagnant gods, no matter what they are given. And in this, many beautiful souls are lost. And then again, another picture of Baal of Avrit. Baal worship had its origins in Chaldea, makes up an entire Catholic faith. Notice a trident or the sigh. And here's two fish-like deities of Chaldeans. And since the Chaldeans were seafaring people, they morphed their gods to contain fish bodies. However, the bird and the fish are synonymous with souls. And while others preferred the horn god, as they are more associated with war, the bull. But we find a trend here. Ra, man, is basically a ram, man. Ramses means the son of Ram. We find Ram as an anagram for Mar, as in Mars, the red planet of war. And here's an axe, born by Zeus. Labyrinthes. Axe gods are famous for cutting down trees. See Zeus before he became the Thunderbolt upgrade one. First he didn't have one. So as we look to the pictures, few things go unnoticed to us. Sarcophagus of the pharaoh Ai. Oh yes, there was a pharaoh Ai. And it's exactly the Ark of the Covenant that is spoken of. That was taken after. It is the real Ark of Ai. Artificial intelligence. So false intelligence. That's what artificial means. It is not real. And again, immortality, living false in the memory of a man and a woman. So it's a horned god. That's why Moses is shown with horns so often. And the fish signify the souls. With the Easter, of course, we've talked about all the names and all the ways that was celebrated, but look at the basic imagery and strip all the crap away, all the pomp, all the circumstance. It is spring. Of course we celebrate. Things revive. They are reborn. An egg has always been the symbol of a soul. The bunny rabbits like sex. Hence the term effing like rabbits. It's renewal, it's rebirth, it's obvious. So what if they took the obvious and made a freaking ritual out of it? It's ridiculous because it's so simple. I also have the monkeys. And I'm going to leave out the moon monkeys for another conversation because it's a big deal. So images. Common saying is, the eyes are the gateway of the soul, but few expand this further. Just about everything in regards to the human being can be found in your eye. Even previous spiritual residencies. A lot of work has been done on the eye itself. Alternative medicine, a technique that looks at patterns and colors and other characteristics of the iris itself. Interesting movie called Eye Origins, you might want to check out. But it can be determined information about a person's sympathetic health and systematic health. Everything you need to know about a person is in their eyes. Their eyes transmit light they send and receive. Fairly obvious to me. But still finds itself as one of the most accurate ways to predict sickness. As we talked about, the ladder is going up and down. Not just up. So many people come from etherical planes, while others are ascending from something more dense. Doesn't mean good or bad. We are all present to teach lessons to each other. A black ring is located around the outside of the iris. This means one has had at least one existence in the nether regions. To avoid confusing yourself by imagining that you are on Earth, it is far better for you to see yourself inside of your body, which is the universe. The organs are planets. And while many points of energy centers are the stars, so be cautious as to what you allow to shine through you. When one has origins from the earth, the eyes are brown, like dirt. Blue, in the eyes, origins are from the sky. Green, on the crest, is from the forest. Soon, I'm going to proceed to race through the universal body as we leave the netherworld of this illusion, this illusionary consciousness, and the fleshy ideas of service to self. And anything superior or superiority, and even racism, because it all dwells there, unfortunately. We can all feel comfortable that there's absolutely nothing that we need to share further with slave gods, oppressive religions, and bigots. With those thoughts, we are already preparing ourselves to tap into what is the undivided. The faster all realize that we have been designed to work together, the faster we get to expand, and expansive states of consciousness that we will so thoroughly describe as I continue this series. Wholeness for all of us. Wholeness, never pieces or scraps. History is always subject to the people willing to write it. It is time you not only know the truth, but be willing to accept it, act it out, and triumph over it. Because we are told From space dust you came, and from space dust you will return. And it should now be with no confusion that the composition of our mind and our body and our soul has had its origins with this universe, and it is connected. Its connectedness bands us in a wavelength, in a biorhythm. This grouping also allows us to be influenced by various elements. Learning the character and the use of these essences will in fact allow you to gain better control over your reality, and actually while doing so also allows us to choose the measure of your energy that you cycle within. That is alchemy, and the active soul is waiting for nothing to happen, is rather causing it to happen. We've all become aware of cycles of time. We don't know everything that's going on to us right now. The actual cycle that is actually happening. Not just the idiots who are messing with our food and our air. The other things that they are not controlling, because every single planet in our solar system is having storms right now. This is a cycle. And it is knowledge of these times and these time cycles that is utmost important for us right now. This is because the times and the seasons and the cycles allow an active being to know when to reap, when to sow, when to build, when to tear down. Most importantly, when you are at the end or a regenerating point of a cycle, so you can prepare for the next phase. And this is what I refer to when I mention the indicators of a time cycle and how to use them. If you look at a pentagram, which is not the most occult symbol used on this dimension, by the way, we of course have dissected this symbol time and time again, and each time it renders even a deeper meaning, a message, as it is a mark of a certain group, is to indicate a territory that they had gained control over. This territory we speak ranges from planetary sectors, geographic locations, all the way to non-material elements, such as souls, that have also come under the circle and the cycle of the circle, or the circle. And notice how the word cycle also sounds just about identical to the word cycle. And I believe this is due to the later nature of one who constantly repeats the same cycle, same circle, failing to graduate, failing to grasp the reason they are in a circle, which can be confusing and dizzying of itself. The seal of Solomon's ring, the pentalpha, is just another word for the pentagram. It is called, well, so called, because if you look at a pentagram, you will notice that you can actually break it down into 3 triangles. Also, 3 letters A, or the Greek alpha. This is the true seal of Solomon. And he used it, as all musicians and magicians have traditionally used it since then, to imprison demonic spirits, to bind them to the will. Pentagram is called the endless knot. Was first used by ancient Sumerians as a sign that meant shackle, or prison. It was even used as a city seal of Jerusalem, and according to an article called The Pentagram on the website of the Masonic Grand Lodge of British Columbia and the Yukon. So the pentagram, AAA, endless knot, a shackle to bind. So what has been discovered is that trapping a spiritual being in a pentagram is done by making them repeat the same patterns over and over again. This is called a hollow movement, which basically means that within a small time delay of adjacent dimensions, a person writes their future through their actions, waiting for the results to come around the wheel of life. This has been dubbed karma. It is very real, and I find it also very eerie that an average lifespan in this particular dimension is also 72 years, hinting to 72 degrees once more. This type of knowledge has been brought to us, has brought us to a higher plateau, showing us that these stars are not only symbols, marks, and 2D symbols or sigils, but also mathematical equations that bring about the result of what they are geometrically designed and calculated to do with very exact precision. The next question would be, what do other stars do? What are their degrees, their hidden secrets, and how are they being used across the dimension? Can a star be in fact, a level of control and more or less barrier to be sure that only one knows such things, could never jump to another sequence? I begin to see that all existence is one big school. It is very possible to flunk out, especially if by chance you begin to do things in improper order. So what you are witnessing, and I'll put these images up for you on Thursday, is a final certificate, a master degree, master mason. It's a deeper meaning of an enneagram that shows a spiritual process graduated through learning the influences of the planet, their particular belief systems, their structures, their geometry, their characters. In all of this, there are only few who have left their mark upon everything in this time. As I've said before, we are in the middle of the Jovian-Saturnian conflict, which reflects throughout just about everything from business logos to religions and movies and games. This goes beyond what people want to argue, especially those who do not study or meditate and expect to know, as if their laziness should be granted the great award of awakening. The Duke of Mar, the Duke of the Sea, this is the Earth's current conqueror. Let us look deeper into this symbolism. I will show you a picture of the Earth's current ruler, known by many titles, 50 that I can find, being adept in the Grail lore, and the story of the gods and the angels and the Cabri and the suns, etc. I advise people to look into this knowledge more deeply if they do not believe. It is clearly controlling everything due to the hive mind, this all-connected nature of this reality, and what the masses are under persuasion of, infected by. And as I have already witnessed, there are already higher levels going on right now. They are not waiting on you to ascend before they start. They are not waiting on Earth to get its act together before something major happens in the galaxy. This is a lie. Every other planet is reacting far stronger than Earth is right now, and this planet fulfills its energy requirements through the cycles of duality, which two opposite forces drive the generation like an engine. The highest states of consciousness accompany no waiting on external energies to act upon you. Most importantly, you who have banded or made pacts with determine the entire experience. There are already many who have achieved ascension, which is closely related to being skilled in God science. It's my intention that we all get along further on this way, to metamorphosize, I guess, to change like this galaxy is changing. It's not just this solar system reacting right now. They all are. And to do that, we must get past the beginning. That is the most difficult phase in existence, because there's really no beginning, just a first point when you become conscious. Always remember the later part. And looking back over the abyss, you have the first chance ever to see this as a whole, to see from the outside the personality that you have built through magical efforts. This body of yours is made up of the abyss, contains every experience that you've had since the first moment of consciousness, up to the time of your leap. You are everything you've done. Your body shows you this. So if you think you're enlightened, your body will echo this. Period. Now a word to the leaping. It's now common knowledge to me that the real adept is actually in control of time, and it might sound weird, but when people are really involved in something, you can tell if they're living in the past. You can tell if they're living in the future. It's an obvious thing, and the art, though, is nowhere near the lackadaisical notions that have often been tossed around as statements as such. Time does not exist to me. To make that statement a fact, you would really have to understand the geometry, the mathematics behind the geometry. You will need to fully activate your pineal gland, the all-seeing eye, to actually project the image of the sphere that you wish to travel to through mental projection, which encases a body in another field other than the current pentagram field. Jumping through time is like crossing a very busy galactic highway. Failing to jump at the proper time means being engaged, dismembered in some way or another. This has also been proven. So what you are witnessing above, with all these images of Marduk, it's the cogs of time, embedded in rope symbolism and multiple realities that has already traveled in possibly became duke over. Duke is not the highest title by far. It is rather a delegation of responsibility, like the hierarchy you see in the military. And for the record, Marduk, Jupiter, Zeus, Jesus, Amor, Baal, Abel, fire, Neribu, are a being, all the same being. So I have to snicker a little bit when people say Neribu's coming close. Neribu is doing what Neribu always does. He is a son, and his father is none other than the Lord Enki, who is Sat, Nin, Bar, Ea, Ai, Asher, Asa, Kron, Dar. And you are looking at the kingdom where the son and his associates have temporarily usurped his fathers, along with the associated thrones. FYI, Tron means throne. But Merodach himself, who means the brightness of the day, was a chief deity of Babylonian pantheon. He was not the father, nor the oldest of the gods. In fact, he was originally the son of Ea, or Ae, king of the underworld, and acquired the place by his triumph over Mamu, Tiamat, us, the dragon of chaos, still us, who is not distinguishable from Tuat, Kurdush, associated with Bel and the dragon myth. There's a Semitic account of this. We are the dragons. And proof that Zeus, Jesus, is the descendant of, Satan. That's Jupiter. Well, Jupiter is Jesus. We'll go on. So when you observe images of Saturn in the sky for an extended period, an ominous, strange feeling washes over you. If you have ever listened to the sounds of Saturn, heebie-jeebies. Technical term. Because Saturn is considered the darkest of all the planets, both primordially and energetically. Roman myth, Saturnus is a little-known deity that is credited with being the father of Jupiter, Zeus, sometimes depicted as Father Time. Even a reaper. Like. In regards to the harvest, Saturn's festivals, Saturnia, was once observed at winter solstice. He may have been modernized to Father New Year. Most of the Saturnian traditions have not survived outside the elitist Germanic secret societies. But Saturn also marks the completion of a week, according to both contemporary calendars and a lore of planetary days. So you are now witnessing one of the greatest secrets that has always been hidden by the Church, and is only known to the high initiates. The rite of mythos, which is the rite of Satan, which they discover, like Luke in Star Wars, that Vader, Pater, or Satan, Saturn, is your father. I can't do the deep voice. That's how my son used to do it when he's a kid. So that the saints are really Satans, Satans. And amongst the Irish saints, we have the names of Saint Bruthe, answering to Bruha, divinity of Hindustan, by the way. Saint Mahudi, divinity of elephants, by the way. Saint Dagon, well, Dagon is Dagon, the god of the Philistines. Saint Malak, the idol Malak of the Bible. So we're starting to figure out where the Irish folk are from. Saint de Chidu, the devil, Irish. I'm probably saying that wrong. Saint Satan, the destroyer. Saint Cronon, Cronus, the Titan. Saint Bull, Cain, Vulcan. And we'll go on Thursday. It's always fun to find out who your family is. Bye for now, guys. Have a wonderful couple days, and thanks for listening.